model actually from? To explore this question, I will walk through this paper. Let's begin with the introduction. Large language models have evolved for simple next token prediction architecture into systems capable of complex reasoning. Traditionally, they rely on chain-of-thought prompting, explicitly generating intermediate reasoning steps before reaching a final answer. These reasoning capabilities are usually acquired through supervised fine-tuning or reinforcement learning, which teach the model to reason in a more structured and iterative way. However, this raises a challenge. How can we assess a model's intrinsic reasoning ability? Ideally, a large language model should be capable of reasoning independently without relying on carefully crafted prompts or repeated user intervention to correct poor responses. Furthermore, fine-tuning models is costly and requires a large amount of level data. So the key question becomes, can large language model reason effectively without prompting or additional training? According to this paper, the answer is yes. The author proposed a novel decoding strategy that generating multiple distinct initial tokens that branch into different reasoning paths. And by simply altering the decoding procedure, they observed that COT reasoning can emerge naturally. Moreover, when such a reasoning path is present, the model tends to show higher confidence in its final answer. So if you see the example here, with COT prompts, they have a high certain for final answer tokens. So in other words, they bypass both prompting and fine-tuning, achieving reasoning behavior entirely unsupervised. Now let's look at how this works, specifically through chain-of-thought decoding. First, let's briefly review greedy decoding, the standard method in large language model. At each step, the model always picks the token with the highest probability without considering alternatives. So in here, the token he is selected with highest probability 0.6. And then also the next step for next token, the head is selected for highest probability to 0.7. In contrast, COT decoding introduces diversity in the early stage of decoding. Here's how the process works. First, instead of picking just one token at the initial step, the model selects the top K tokens, generating K different decoding passes. Next, for each of those paths, decoding process using standard greedy decoding to complete the responses. And third, a confidence score is calculated for each path. This score reflects how confidently the model made its choice during encoding. The confidence score is computed by averaging the probability difference between the top and second ranked tokens at the decoding step T. This top and second ranked tokens is chosen for their maximum post-softmax probabilities from the vocabulary. So if you see the equation here, this is the top ranked tokens probability, and this is the second ranked token probability. So if you see the example, the right side, at step T, the cage is the top ranked token and don't is the second ranked token. So we can compute the difference between these token probabilities. And we have to sum all of these differences between step 0, step 1 to the final step. And then we scale with the number of tokens. So this is how we compute the confidence scoring. So finally, the pass with highest confidence score is selected as the final answer. So here is the example of the greedy pass and COT decoding pass. And the blue letter is the confidence score of the pass. And here, the COT pass do not consistently outrank non-COT ones in the confidence score. But the presence of a COT pass typically leads to a more confident decoding of the final answer. We can see the high confidence score for COT pass. And they also examining 100 questions in mathematical data set. The 88% of decoding pass, which is the highest confidence score in top 10 pass, contains COT pass. This means the large language models possess inherent reasoning capabilities for numerous tasks following pre-training. However, these abilities are obscured by the predominant use of greedy decoding, opting to solve problems directly. And the author said that this reasoning paths can be easily uncovered by incorporating alternative decoding paths. Here is some kind of mini experiments for the COT decoding. They compared different decoding they compare different COT path extraction approaches. They use the model's raw probability, which is log likelihood of generated sequence in here, but it is not reliable because sequence with high probability doesn't mean it is a good reasoning path. It is because sometimes the model is just confident in a short or direct answer. And also in length normalized probability, which divide the log probability by the number of tokens, is also not effective. In contrast, COT decoding achieves the high performance in both mathematical and the set-based dataset. And to compute the confidence score, they have to identify the answer spans in a model's response. So what they use is that they just extract the last numerical value in mathematical reasoning task, or just extract the final option in set-based reasoning task. And they can also just extend the model output with the prompt, so the answer is. So here the bold letters is the answer span for the final model's response. They also considered about that can sampling achieve a similar effect and unveil the COT reasoning path. They compare with self-consistency method, so try to answer to this question. The self-consistency method is that they generate multiple reasoning paths and sampling the diverse set of reasoning paths and then use it for final answer generation. This kind of sampling works well under few-shot COT prompting, but it does not without the prompts. It is because of the model's strong tendency in providing a direct answer during decoding. In contrast, COT decoding explicitly encourages diversity at the first step by generating multiple distinct initial tokens that branch into different reasoning trajectory. So as a result, the COT decoding achieves higher performance than self-consistency without the COT prompt and greedy decoding. And we can also consider about the branching at other decoding step. For now, in COT decoding, they only branching at the first step of the decoding. And they did experiment for this, and they said the early branching enhances the diversity of potential paths. The later stage branching is influenced by previous generous token. For example, initializing with token 5 decreases the likelihood of rectifying an erroneous pass. However, still, the optimal branching point varies with the task. If you see the right side of the example, it works good for mid-pass branching. Lastly, they also considered about the aggregation of decoding paths. In self-consistency method, they aggregate the answer over all top K paths. It helps to mitigate sensitivity to small differences in the model's logic. However, the majority answers is unlikely to be the correct one. So they propose weight aggregation method which take the answer that maximize sum of the confidence score for K paths. Let's move on to main experiment. They use the QA format dataset and mathematical reasoning, common sense reasoning, and symbolic reasoning dataset. For especially the ear parity task is that answer to the query was person born in an even or odd year. This task, the SOTA models like GPT struggle with such task, achieving a chance accuracy. And also they use these pre-trained models, Palm and Mistral and Gemma. So as a result, they said that COT decoding effectively elicits reasoning from language models. Here's some evidence. First, COT decoding is the only decoding strategy that improves language models' reasoning. They did experiment with other decoding methods such as top K sampling, beam search, temperature sampling. But some of decoding method even hurts model reasoning compared to greedy decoding, and the only COT decoding improves the accuracy. And also COT decoding gains consistent accuracy over both math and common sense reasoning tasks across various language models. And COT decoding elicits reasoning across model scales. COT decoding consistently yields 10 to 30% absolute accuracy gain on mathematical dataset. And on ear parity, the model's performance remains flat even scale up model size in greedy decoding. However, COT decoding significantly boosts the performance by recovering the COT path. They compared COT decoding and instruction tuning. The COT decoding has a comparable performance with instruction tuning performance, the 63 to 67. And this is the instruction tuned performance with greedy and COT decoding. So instruction tuning with sufficient COT data can be partially achieved by modifying the decoding procedure. However, even after instruction tuning, the model occasionally persists in attempting to directly address a question. So if we apply COT decoding to instruction tuning, COT decoding can enhance the exploration of alternative paths by triggering a COT first, and then consequently leading to more accurate answers. We can see the improved performance of COT decoding in just pre-trained and instruction tuning model. They look onto about the choice of K, which is the number of top alternative token considered. The typically higher values of K result in improved model performance. However, the effect of K is less significant in instruction tuned models. This is because the process of instruction tuning brings forth the majority of COT paths to the first few decoding paths. so they can gain high accuracy with small k. And secondly, they also did experiments about the model's intrinsic reasoning abilities. First, they said the task difficulty affects COT decoding success. COT decoding improves reasoning overall, but the performance gains depends heavily on task difficulty. So for simpler tasks, correct COT paths are often found easily. However, for complex or synthetic tasks, correct COT paths are harder to generate. And even for when the solution involves only 1-2 reasoning steps, model often find correct paths. However, the more than 3 steps, performance drops and more decoding paths are needed to find correct reasoning. And the take less represented and pre-training show lower accuracy and fewer correct COT paths. This aligns with findings that language models are highly influenced by the distribution they have been trained on. And the language model have vulnerabilities on tasks like coin flip and web of lies. Models simulate reasoning but fail at state tracking. And on multi-step mathematical problems, models tend to compute left to right rather than using correct mathematical order. Lastly, they compared few-shot COT and COT decoding. Few-shot COT prompts can teach the model how to solve synthetic tasks often by imitation. However, it constrains the model to follow an artificial strategy created through human knowledge. In contrast, COT decoding reveals the model's intrinsic reasoning behavior without prompt-induced bias. They can also combine COT decoding with COT prompting. COT prompting maintains a strong performance compared to self-consistency at a similar cost without prompting and with prompting. They use the aggregation paths like a self-consistency and compare with the naive one. So in conclusion, this paper finds the novel findings. Large language model can reason by simple decoding chains without prompting. They challenge the prevailing notion that large language models are inherently incapable of effective reasoning without prompting. This is because only the greedy path is considered during decoding. So they suggest the COT decoding, which reliably selects COT paths based on answer confidence. They elicit COT reasoning by exploring top K token alternatives at the first decoding step. The language model's confidence in its final answers increases when a COT is present in its decoding path. And also they understand the LLM's intrinsic reasoning capabilities without imposing human priors. The prompting technique is hard to distinguish between the extent of human teaching and the independent reasoning by large language models. So by COT decoding, a more truthful assessment of the model's intrinsic reasoning abilities. So the answer for the question, where do the reasoning abilities actually come from? The pre-trained language model inherently possesses reasoning approaches for many tasks, such as math, common sense reasoning. And the prompt techniques bring those inherent reasoning paths forward as the top decoding path. And few-shot COT demonstrations play a teaching role in guiding how models solve a task, with models primarily mimicking the format of these prompts to generate accurate reasoning paths. However, here is some limitation that increase computational cost from decoding multiple paths. And the confidence score based on top one to top two token probabilities may be less precise for open-ended tasks. So for future work, they will explore branching at any decoding step. So this require efficient search strategies to decrease the inference time. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you for the presentation today. So let's have a Q&A session. So are there any kind of questions from student? So every student think about the questions within 3 minutes. In the meantime, I will ask some quick question regarding the COT decoding. So actually, I missed some part of the algorithms proposed by COT decoding in contrast to the live grid decoding. So there was a slide to distinguish the two different ways. Maybe this one. Yeah. So actually, the grid decoding only choose a single token at each step according to the probability of the token to appear based on the 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 cross entropy losses actually. But here, COT decoding in the step one, the decoding step zero is exactly the same with beam search, right? So maybe I guess that there should be one hyperparameters we call the K, how many branches we can maintain throughout the decoding. So decoding step zero, and supposing that the top K was set to 5, then we find the 5 tokens with the highest probability at step zero, right? And the
Yeah.
next step, my curiosity happened in the next step. So, in the case when we use the top K or top E sampling, they only focus on a single token generated in the next step, right?
Yeah.
But what about the COT decoding? According to by these images illustrated here, the COT decoding just complete the prefetch from the initial token decided in the step zero. Was it right?
Yeah, it's right. They just pick top, they default top 10, they pick the top 10 default.
Mm, mm.
And after the first step, they just continue with greedy decoding. So they have total 10 decoding paths at final.
Yeah. So we select top K initial token and conduct the multiple greedy decoding over all the tokens selected in step zero, right?
Yeah.
Mm. Then in this scenario, there are 5 greedy decoding conducted here, and then our goal is to select which decoding path is better than others, right? Maybe the check marker expressed which one is better here. Then
Yeah.
when we decide the better one, you told us that the introduced metric is utilize the difference between uh, the best probability tokens and the second best probability token, which is kind of the uncertainty in active learning, or here they said this is confidence, right? So then this is just the entire path we have to do with COT decoding, or I'm curious about that. Most of the top K or top E sampling think about only a single token at each step, right? But this paper propose another idea. Instead of focus on only a single token, just let's focus on the full fast of the by degree decoding, but initialize from different the tokens, initial token at step zero. So that's the main distinction between the methodologies compared to this one.
Um, so can can you repeat one
Yeah, yeah,
more?
yeah. So I try to understand the major distinction of this work compared to the another decoding, not the greedy decoding, the top K or top P nuclear sampling like that.
They um I think they consider the second ranked token in
Mm,
here,
mm.
so they can compute like how this the top ranked token is confident compared to the second.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, yeah. But you told me that so after the step zero, the step one to step the last step, we conduct the grid decoding, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they process
This,
a grid, yeah, decoding, but they compute the confidence score for all steps.
so they do the grid decoding, but when we choose one out of them, we calculate the compute score at the token level
Yeah, yeah,
and then merge it as the overall score for each grid path.
yeah,
Mm,
right.
okay. Then why the name is COT decoding? I guess that they didn't provide any specialized instruction in the input prompt, like try to make a region first before answering.
Yeah. I think
Yeah, well,
because
yeah.
we just try to elicit COT by just decoding techniques. So they just named.
Then how could we know that the decoding by COT decode includes the reasoning inside their generation?
Um, we can see the results of the paths in here.
Mm,
Some of decoding paths has not COT, but I mentioned here like they examining 100 question for reasoning mathematical task. So they generated the top K for every question.
I
And
see, I
then
see.
yeah,
So among the top K initial tokens, even though there are some tokens, finishes immediately like grid decoding, there could be another better path that include the listening, right?
yeah, right.
I see, I see. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah. Yeah, then there is only one hyperparameter, the top K in COT decoding.
yeah.
Mm.
Right. And also we can just add branching not only at the first step, we can just add branching to step 3 or step 4 steps.
So we can customize at the moment when we start to branching with the COT decoding. Then,
Yeah.
then, then how could we generate the sequence before that target step? That is just a existing sampling method. So if we decide we will apply the COT decoding at step 10 in
Yeah.
some scenario, then how could we generate the previous tokens from step 0 to step 9? Just
They
a one
just
single path of grid decoding?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, the author said like it is better to apply branching at first step because for
Hmm.
the diversity of token.
Hmm. I agree with that. Yeah. If
Yeah.
we generate multiple steps using the grid decoding, maybe even though we make some variability after step 10 or step 11, that doesn't make big difference in terms of the probability. Hmm.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the big difference in here is the computing of confidence scoring.
I
I
see, I see.
think just yeah, greedy algorithm is just multiplying the top ranked token probability.
Mm.
In here, they compute the
Yeah,
different.
I think that this COT decoding have two differences compared to other ones. The first one is, as you mentioned, the how could we estimate the confidence score? The previous one only used the single probability of the target token, but in this method, they consider the best two tokens and calculate the difference between them as uncertainty. Yeah, so the confidence here mentioned seems to be uncertainty widely used in active learning. When we choose some kind of example, use informative example out of the unlabeled data set to be labeled later. So that's the one difference. And second difference is that instead of selecting a single token at each step, they just generate the full path using greedy search, but start from different tokens selected by the computer scoring, something like that.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, so thank you for clarification on my questions. So are there other questions from student?
Yeah, I have some good questions. Could you go to like page 22? There was some term that I want to get clarified. Yeah, at the end of for the last sentence, it says like left to right computing. What does that mean?
I think the large language model is trained by just predict the next token. So for some mathematical task, they don't like some of mathematical tasks have a different order to solve it, but the language models tend to process left to right, so I think it conflicts the task. So language model has a low performance for this task, but this is just my thought. So
Okay, thank you. And I also have another question regarding more like a generally about this paper itself. So I just want to